Yes, indeed. Welcome into another episode of Total Hockey Now here on the Total Hockey Now Twitter and YouTube network. I am your host at Pucking Thoughts, and with me as always, my line mates as usual, at Ant Rivera 86, at Fuzzy Chris 91 with a new mic. You said he was cutting out. We responded. He's ready to rock today.
Is this on? Is it on?
Yeah.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Now I make sure everybody can hear my brutally honest hot takes about hockey still. That there's like you won't be like, oh, was he saying something bad about the Leafs? No, you will know that I am saying something bad about the Leafs now. There's no question. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Look at how we listen to the THN fan base. You ask for a new mic, Chris Moraes gives you a new mic. How about that? Also, real quick, on Twitter, it says that we have Summer Mock Draft 1. I know that sometimes there's issues with writing the description out on our, what is it, a StreamYard or whatever. Sometimes I mess up, but it says Summer Mock Draft 1. Not yet. That's coming soon.
Yeah, Anthony leads me into a bit of bad news. So there's not many fantasy hockey mock draft platforms available in early July. Understandably, football's gearing up, baseball's still going, basketball's a more popular sport. I get it. So usually we're resigned to using ESPN, which is not the best draft platform, but hey, if it allows us to mock, great. Tested it out, yesterday, day before, everything was looking good. Had the, bookmark the page for the mock drafts. The only downfall is they didn't update it with the 2024 draft class, so there's no Macklin Celebrini, but other than that, draft is still the same pretty much. Went to go get ready for today. No mock drafts available on the ESPN platform or anywhere else. So we will not be doing the summer mock draft today. I am sorry. We are all, if you're disappointed, just imagine how disappointed we are. And maybe it'll be back up next week. I have a feeling maybe they're bringing it, that took it down so they can update add Celebrini in there and a few other things, and update some team affiliations. But sorry, no mock today.
Let's just go ahead and blame ESPN. Just friendly reminder that we just blame ESPN.
Yeah.
It's like, good for you guys for trying, right? It's like the meme there where like Bart's holding the cake and it says, at least you tried. I guess that's what they did.
Yeah, I'm going to give ESPN a pass here because they're the only one that offers anything. If without them, we wouldn't have anything usually at this time of the year. So I get other draft platforms and fantasy platforms are going to use their resources towards things that are more popular than hockey, but Yahoo, I'm looking at you. You're like one of the kings of fantasy, fantasy sport platform. You can't devote a little bit of bandwidth or whatever you got to do to, keep a few mock hockey rooms open during the summer. Come on now.
Yeah. Look, listen, I know everything is about fantasy football. And like you said, you got basketball and you even got, baseball. At some point, Total Hockey Now will get this situated. And at some point we will have, right after the off season's over, there will be fantasy drafts for hockey. I mean, it has to be.
So I would expect, maybe by the time we get back to you next week, ESPN will have their hockey platform back up again. I checked this yesterday and I did a mock. I went pretty good. I wish I had saved the team. But nonetheless, we will deliver that when we can. So
who went number one in your draft?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Who did you pick? What do you mean you did a mock? You didn't even tell us?
We got no team.
Mocking?
I assumed that I would be able to go back in and see what I did, but everything is now wiped. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, we got plenty of other things to talk about. We're going to look ahead to 2025 Stanley Cup odds and free agency as well. Some of the big names there. But of course, got to start with, quick hits, which we always do. And, we're going to get caught up here on a few items that, maybe we overlooked over the last couple of weeks with free agency frenzy going on and all that good stuff. Just a few guys that are still out there. If, it suits you, Ryan Suter, James Van Riemsdyk, Tyler Johnson, Kevin Lankinen, Justin Schultz, John Klingberg. So those are probably some of the better names still out there. I don't think that's really doing anything for anybody.
Who? They're still out there.
I mean, I could see JVR getting a deal at some point, but, and Lankinen, first time a goalie goes down, but, other than that.
I mean, if Ryan Suter can sign somewhere else, he will then be paid by the Minnesota Wild, the Dallas Stars, because he was bought out. He's probably cashing pay. He could be cashing paychecks from a couple of teams. I think he should maybe, I don't know, give it a run. I hear that. I mean, there's got to be somebody still trying to get to the cap floor. We'll never know The cap friendly has died today, so that's unfortunate. But I'm sure somebody needs a veteran who can be, I don't know, 7th, 8th guy, play like 13 minutes a night in and out of the lineup at this point.
Before we talk about some of the minor signings that have happened since the last time Total Hockey Now was with you, yes, today the cap friendly is officially, we talked about it last time, like, hey, we talked about last week, like, hey, they're still up, good for them. And today was the, we'll call it the farewell post on the website, on the homepage, sending thanks to all the people, that helped over the years and all that stuff. But yes, it is officially a Puckpedia era now, if you want your cap numbers or something like that. However, you're a basketball fan. I forget what is it, like Salary Swish, which was the cap-friendly basketball equivalent, is independent and still up. So you basketball fans still get all those great resources cap-friendly had. Doesn't help us, though.
I'm sure someone is going to come up with a newer, better version of cap-friendly, especially after this season of not being able to see everyone's salary contracts and how they can make trades. And I'm pretty sure someone's going to come up with it.
It's coming. It's just, it was so abrupt, and
it's so unfortunate that I wasted my last search on like the Washington Capitals and their $100 million payroll. That's what I wasted it on. Like the irony behind it, like all the other things I could have seen, I wasted it on that. If I could go back in time, I would have probably looked at something else. Like, I don't know.
Although I do feel like that's an apropos,
it is
in the same time,
It is. I understand why cap friendly would have been bought by the Washington Capitals. They don't want people to know that that their payroll exceeds 100 million, and that team was a no-show in the first round of the playoffs. I would want to hide that information too.
We'll see. Capitals are definitely an interesting team going into next year. Another team that made an interesting signing, recently was Vladimir Tarasenko heading to Detroit on a 2-year, $9.5 million contract. Not quite sure what the plan is there with Kane and Tarasenko. I mean, they did not see how that worked out for the Rangers about a year and a half ago. So I listen. Tarasenko will play okay there. I'm sure he'll get his points and stuff. But I don't know what that signing does for Detroit. But hey, Steve Yzerman knows hockey better than me.
After everything that we've talked about with Detroit last week, when I saw this signing, the first person I thought of was Chris. And I messaged him right away. He's like, I don't know what Detroit's doing.
Can anybody explain Yzerman's plan anymore? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. This is a mediocre hockey team, and they're just running it back. They looked at the Rangers and went, nah, these guys, we need them now that they're older. Like, there's nothing wrong with bringing back Patrick Kane if it's it's an incentive friendly deal. So if he does what he has to do, he could get paid, which is fine. He took it. Everybody's happy with it. I guess you can go get Vladimir Tarasenko, clog up another hole, but I don't know what the Detroit Red Wings are doing. And I don't think Detroit fans can explain it either. Like, nobody really knows what's going on. This doesn't look like they went out to get a goalie again. And you're like, why? Like, why? Like, what?
Alex Leone was your guy. I thought like you were, like for better or worse, like he emerged of the pool of what you had.
They have 3 goalies. Trust me, from somebody who was a fan of a team that had 3 goalies on the roster, it's not great. So I don't know. I can't explain it anymore.
I mean, you got to assume Talbot and Lyon are the two that are going to battle it out and do a 50-50 split. But I mean, there's other guys there too. They're okay down the middle. Larkin, Comfer, Andrew Kopp. Like, you got guys you want down the middle, but like, I don't know, having Kane and Tarasenko on the same line, if that's the direction they're going, that's going to be pretty slow. Like last year when they brought in DeBrincat, that made sense. Younger guy, was trying to get out of a situation he perceived as bad. Okay, that's a piece that we can potentially build around and being our top 6 for the long term. But just bringing Kane and adding Tarasenko, I don't get it. But we'll see what happens there in Detroit. Again, Steve Yzerman knows hockey better than us. So other signing there, another signing in the Atlantic, Anton Lundell signs a 5-year, $30 million deal to stay with the Panthers. So that's a guy they didn't lose, and he was a key player for them. So good that they kept him around, and they've got a term with him, and they know they could keep him around. Jack Roslovic signs a 1-year, $2.8 million deal with the Hurricanes. That's a very Hurricane signing right there.
I mean, it's very on par with what the Carolina Hurricanes would do. I will say this though, their team looking a little mid, just a little bit. They're starting to run out of depth there. So Like, I don't know if they're like, I'm just saying, I don't know if they're going to be elite. They might be good, but I don't know if they're going to be elite.
I mean, they still got a pretty good blue line there. They still, it's the goaltending. It's Freddie Anderson. It's, Kochekov is going to be the guy that takes over next season. Anderson's going to be a free agent next year. We'll talk about the 2025 free agent class later. I mean, yeah, they got a pretty solid top six, but having Roslovic plugged in as a wing on your top six, I mean, did you not? You played against the Rangers in the playoffs, and you saw how poorly that worked out for you. So you said, I got to go get some of that for my top six. I don't know. I don't know about that. And then just a couple other moves here. Eli Tolvanen stays with the Kraken, 2 years, $6.95 million. Panthers signed Adam Boquist today on a 1-year deal. So both Boquist brothers are now in South Florida. And we did have one trade over the last week there. The Oilers clear some cap space by saying Ryan McLeod and a prospect to Buffalo for Matthew Savoy. Good on the Oilers for getting a prospect that's got some promise there. And Buffalo needed some help down the middle, and they get a good third line center. I think that might have been a little bit of a steep price there.
I don't know what the Buffalo Sabres are doing. Another team that just wants to be stuck in mediocrity. I've said this before, and this is not new. Like, the city of Buffalo is like, we're not visiting that for fun, right? You're going through Buffalo because, I don't know, like you're trying to get to Niagara or something, right? So there's not much to enjoy in the city of Buffalo, even less now if you're turning this team into I don't know, whatever it is. They buy out Jeff Skinner, and you're like, okay, like that's fine. And then you're trading like a young kid that he's still developing. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to give him up, but the return that you're getting, like, you didn't have to pay that. You could have probably third line centers. You can get those for cheap, or you can develop one. That's not that hard. So I don't know. I think it's a battle between the Red Wings and the Sabres to build the most mediocre hockey team for however many more years that they can do it.
Come on, Chris, you got to be making a pit stop for some boneless buffalo wings, right? I mean, you at least at that point make a little stop there.
I have been to Buffalo once. I went to TGIF. That's all I could find in downtown. Well, I didn't even go watch hockey. I went to go watch the Jays affiliate, the Bison.
The Buffalo Bison, yeah, the AAA team.
I did. I was there. We decided we were going to do that, but
yeah. I've been to Buffalo. I went to a Sabres game. It was against the Capitals. It was a good. I like that arena. It's nothing special about it, but it's still a pretty good hockey arena.
I'm just saying, is there a lot to do in downtown Buffalo?
I mean, we were there for a weekend, and we spent one of the days at Niagara Falls and in Canada. So that probably tells you everything you need to know right there.
I'm just saying.
Now, let me throw this out there, because we've got back-to-back teams here that we really don't know what they're doing. And I don't think, at this stage, any of us expect Buffalo or Detroit to make the playoffs. Still a long off season to go. Things can happen. But if you had to pick one of those two teams to make the playoffs next year, who would you be riding with?
I think it's Detroit.
Okay.
I think I would go Detroit here. And it's so crazy how quickly this has changed in over a year, where we were thinking Buffalo could probably be one of those final spots. And now it's, like Chris said, like, we're looking at a mediocre team right now. And, for their hopes, hopefully they stay that way, because you don't want them heading in Ottawa territory right now, which was a big fall.
We're going to talk about Ottawa's odds for the 2025 Stanley Cup later, and how they are above certain teams is mind-boggling. For me, between Detroit and Buffalo, I want to pick Buffalo, but I think Detroit's got, as
Maybe
much
if
as
they kept Skinner.
If they had kept Skinner, I mean, they bring in Jason Zucker in effect to kind of replace him, but that's not exactly like a replacement there. I mean, they looked good till Tage Thompson got hurt, and then the season just kind of derailed from there. So they made the trade for Bowen Byram, helps the blue line with Darlene and Power there. Yeah, I still got to lean Detroit if I got to pick one of those two teams for the playoffs.
Having said bad things about the city of Buffalo, though, I will pick the Buffalo Sabres. They have the most upside. Detroit is a collection of what? It's a collection of used toys. Like, I don't know. I will say this for Buffalo. They do have JJ Peterka. Jack Quinn is there. Zach Benson. These are young players. If they can contribute, I think Buffalo will be just fine. Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, Dylan Cousins are there. The big guys can produce. Hopefully, the two advantages they have, you mentioned it, on the blue line, right? You go out to get Bowen Byram. You already have Rasmus Dahlin. You get another year of Owen Powers. That is a really good, strong backcourt there. That teams would be selling their soul to get just one of those three players. And right, like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was pretty good. Maybe like it's too early to break out like the Devin Levi jersey right now, especially after how like much we were all collectively hurt. It still stings. So they have the most upside. So if I'm going to take something, I'm going to take the upside. I look at the Detroit Red Wings and they have no upside. That it looks meh.
Call me an ego because I'm waffling. I'm taking the Sabres. You're right. The blue line is the deciding factor there. So, yeah. Well, I'm switching to Buffalo for my answer. Yeah. I a little too much stock in like some of the name value that's in Detroit versus, like you said, the upside and the much better blue line. So,
can I hop on that train as well?
Absolutely. Yeah,
because I have the same thought process as you. I'm thinking names. I'm thinking veterans, and then Chris said this most immaculate. I can't even say it. Like everything that he said about the defense, I'm like sold on because I love Bowen Byram. Owen Power, you talking around here like Rasmus? I mean, I'm sold now. Chris has turned us on Detroit.
He's not going to change me on the boneless wings thing, but he has changed me there. So yeah, so there you go.
I take my wins where I can. That's it.
Yeah. Hey, a win's a win.
A win's a win, right? They don't ask you how; they ask you how many.
Exactly. A win's a win. So that pretty much catches us up on the transactions and stuff from the last week. Macklin Celebrini and Artem Levshunov both signed their entry-level deals. Celebrini's probably going to start the year with the Sharks. Levshunov probably down in the AHL, but he probably gets to the Blackhawks at some point this season. So, but we're not going to have the mock draft today, sadly. But I do want to ask. Macklin Celebrini in drafts, and then we still have a whole summer of stuff to shake out here in terms of where he ranks. But last year, when we were talking about Connor Bedard, there was a fear of if you didn't grab him by the third round, somewhere in the third round, you probably weren't going to get him. Where do we target Celebrini this year? See, for me, I think fourth, fifth round, because not to the same extent as Bedard, but he's going to get a ton of opportunities. He's going to probably have better, younger talent playing around him this year than what Bedard had in Chicago last year. So the potential's there. I'd probably say somewhere in that fourth, fifth round. If you don't grab Celebrini by then, he's probably not going to be there probably by round 6 or 7, the latest.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because this question was going through my head when you had mentioned that they weren't in the mock draft roster right now. And I was like, oh, Bedard or Celebrini. Look, I don't follow the minors as much as you guys do. So I know the names like when they talk about McDavid at the top, when you hear the top names, and Bedard was one of those names. And he was he went first in a lot of mock drafts, especially those keeper leagues. So I don't know. I haven't heard too much about Celebrini as much as you guys have. So I would assume that he gets drafted a little lower than a lot of these other players. I still think in keeper leagues, maybe Connor Bedard gets drafted over him.
I think in a keeper league, for sure, Celebrini is going to go in those first probably 2 rounds. But in a redraft league is probably more where I'm thinking he's in. Try and grab him somewhere in that 4 to 5 round because 6 and 7, you're probably playing a little bit with fire there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I know Macklin Celebrini is going to be dynamic. I don't know if he's as dynamic today as Connor Bedard was. And there's nothing like I understand that Bedard played in Chicago and they were surrounded by nothing, but Connor Bedard to me didn't need anybody else. Like he can create certain things by himself. I don't know if Macklin Celebrini is going to be able to do that at his age. I'm also a little bit worried about the college hockey. So when you play college hockey, you play less games. It's like it was a star-studded group that he was with. And I'm not trying to take anything away from it. It's just the upside of taking a rookie that early is the opportunity cost of not taking an established player. And if I can get 60 to 65 points out of a, second line player at that point in the draft, like I'm betting on the upside of Celebrini here. And the problem with the San Jose Sharks, yes, there may be better, but is this team going to possess the puck? Like, you have to have the puck in order to do something. And I mean, this team is really bad. So you're right. Everything that works in his favor right now is going to be the volume, which is exactly how you play NHL DFS, right? It's all about volume. How much, if guys see a lot of ice time, if they play a lot of meaningful minutes, sometimes you're not worried about the immediate production. You're saying, hey, a broken clock is right twice a day. He's going to get his assists and everything because he's going to be out there a lot. But I don't know if they're just going to run him out there crazy and just let him kind of have fun. Like, there's still structure to a hockey game. There's still things that the San Jose Sharks want to put in place. There's still veterans that are there as well. And like, you signed them to be there and play. They're not coming in just to, I don't know, do nothing. Like, you didn't sign Tyler Toffoli to just sit, right? You're going to give him the opportunities that you did, especially with the money that you gave him. So I don't know if I want to go that early. If he starts to fall, maybe. But in the 4-5 range, like, I may just say, hey, I'll take a pass here. And if it bites me, so be it. But there are other players in that range that I think I would like more than Celebrini and the possible upside that he could bring.
I think with, right now, Daily Faceoff has Celebrini projected to be with Tyler Toffoli and Fabian Zetterlund. So maybe not a ton of goals in his first year, but I think if those lines hold true, a lot of assists. And then on the second line, you got Mikael Granlund between Will Smith and William Eklund. And if I know it would be a really young line, but I mean, you put Celebrini between Eklund and Will Smith, that could keep make defensemen have their hands full. At least, when they're going. It'll be interesting to see if they put those guys together on the power play. But yeah, I mean, 4-5, maybe a little early, 6-7 maybe is the better spot. But, it all depends on your league settings and all that stuff as usual. So talk plenty more fantasy hockey and mock draft stuff when we have mock drafts to talk about. But unfortunately, we won't today. Moving on here to wrap up quick hits. Jessica Campbell was hired by the Seattle Kraken as the first woman to be a full-time NHL assistant coach. She had worked as an assistant on the Coachella Valley AHL affiliate with Dan Bilesma. He also, steps up, is the head coach there as well. So kudos to the Kraken for being on the forefront of that. And finally, the Dallas Stars are taking their non-nationally televised games to the streaming world, leaving the Diamond Sports Group, which ran the regional cable network that had previously had Star Games. They're the first major men's professional sports franchise to move their broadcast to a streaming service, in this case called Victory Plus. It's free and ad supported. So it sounds like it's just going to be a TV channel that streams versus coming to you over the air or through a cable box. So be interesting to see how that experiment works. And then, a topic we kept putting off just for time, but we can talk about it now. Drive to Survive is going to the same company that does the Formula One racing. Drive to Survive is going to be a to be determined NHL series. It's a 6-episode run that's going to come out in October on Amazon Prime. It'll follow about 20 players beginning after this past season's All-Star break. The list includes McDavid, Draisaitl, Crosby, Matthews, William Nylander, David Pastrnak, Matthew Tkachuk, and Connor Bedard. And related news, Crave, a streaming service up in Chris's neck of the woods, is going to be doing a docuseries focused on the Montreal Canadiens called The Rebuild Inside the Montreal Canadiens for an 8-episode run. And that'll also be available later this year in both English and French. So, Chris, you'll have to let us know how that is. But of the players we mentioned up there, which one are you most intrigued to follow behind the scenes?
Obviously Connor McDavid has to be one of them because, as much as he is the guy in the NHL, a lot of people will say, if I saw him walking down the street, I wouldn't even know it's Connor McDavid. So to see a little bit behind the scenes of him and what happens during the season for him, I wonder if it goes throughout the playoffs. Like, is it going to follow him, throughout this Stanley Cup run? That would be cool. And obviously there's also Matthew Tkachuk, just because of the character he is. And you'd always like to see a rookie in Connor Bedard. And I hope they do this as well as they did the Nashville Predators one. They did it behind the glass a couple years ago that I caught on a flight. And didn't they do a documentary as well? It was like the Rangers and Flyers.
So they used to do like what's that HBO? A Hard Knocks. It was like a Hard Knocks style show, but they would do it for the two teams leading up to the Winter Classic. So they did that in the past.
People should, if you're not like big on hockey, you should really check these out. This is a good showing of like the behind the scenes, the players, who they are. I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I do as well. I'm a sucker for that. I mean, I've watched Drive to Survive, and like there's a lot of F1 fans now, and I'm like, okay, so you watch Drive to Survive, you fell in love with the personalities, all the drama and everything behind, and now all of a sudden you're watching it on Sundays, right? But like I've cared about F1 way back when, in the day where people didn't even know it existed. All that to say, it's good for the sport. It's good that the NHL is marketing some of its players, because the NHL doesn't do a very good job of, marketing its top talent. I would definitely love to watch David Pastrnak. I feel like he's fun. I feel like he is fun. A lot. Not saying the others aren't. Definitely want to see Sidney Crosby. Just kind of, I feel like he's reserved, but I feel like he's fun to be around. Like, he wants to do things. I feel like he's like quiet. We don't really know much about Sid. You know what I mean? Like what's going on? Like, what does he do? They're kind of like very kept to themselves, kind of. And Matthew Tkachuk, obviously, if they go all the way to the playoffs, I want to see what was going on back there as much as we can. Also, it's good to know that it is coming to Crave, so that's good. I'm going to need to allegedly find somebody with a Crave account or maybe an Amazon account, allegedly, of course, because we don't share passwords, and see, what I can, I can find.
Especially cross borders, because now now you get now it's international. You can't do that.
Right. I'm not saying, there's a VPN or something. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying allegedly, if somebody wanted to come hang over and then, I don't know, maybe leave the password on the TV, could be arranged.
Could be arranged. I agree with Pastrnak. I think, the Dunkin' Donuts commercials in the Boston area, and he's kind of like, he's not going, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think that guy's going to finish his career in Boston, just like, Bergeron, probably like Marchand. But yeah, I that would be, because I feel like he's like a fan favorite and a personality. Crosby, I feel like, would be boring. I got to work with him a little bit way back in the day, and he's one of those guys where, like, you meet him and now you can't dislike him anymore, no matter what, because he's just like a super nice guy. But yeah, I agree. Also, Tkachuk would be a good one to follow. Draisaitl, if it was this season, would be fun to follow, but I don't know. But that would be cool to see the Oilers run to the finals too, through McDavid and Draisaitl there. So we'll be on the lookout for that in the fall.
It's interesting that they took two of the guys from the same team. Like, is McDavid going to get his own show and Draisaitl? Are they going to combine them together? It'd be interesting to see how they, display that out there.
Yeah, maybe you do an all Oilers episode, or you spread it out a little bit or something like that. But yeah, nonetheless, that's going to be, it'll be fun to watch. The only thing I will say is, like, waiting till October to let it out. Like, you got games coming. Like, the whole point is we need hockey content now. And I understand the summer is not the ideal time to release new stuff. You're not going to get good ratings, good streams, numbers, all that stuff. But I don't need a behind the scenes hockey in October from the previous season when I've got brand new games coming.
Yeah.
We're
here for you, though. We're here.
We're not going anywhere. We might be. We're going to be here throughout. So yeah. Speaking of next season, we're going to talk 2025 Stanley Cup odds in a second, but then we're going to take a look at the 2025 free agent class here, and we're going to have that scrolling across the screen up for the bottom for everybody that's watching there. You look, and we're not going to go name by name. We have no idea what the future is going to be for some of these guys, because let's face it, the season dictates if somebody's getting traded at the deadline or if somebody gets extended. But obviously the big name on here is Leon Draisaitl, and what his future is going to look like in Edmonton. I don't know how they keep him. I don't see how it happens with the finances and the cap. They'd have to get creative, but I would be really curious to see what Leon Draisaitl would look like, A, on another team, and B, just to see how Edmonton handles the trade deadline that year, because we all expect them to be right back in the mix for a Stanley Cup in the Western Conference again next year. But I mean, what happens if it's the trade deadline? And obviously, you're still going to go for it, but you've got nothing with Draisaitl. It's just that is not something I want hanging over my head. I don't want every time that the Oilers are in an elimination game, is this Leon Draisaitl's last game as an Edmonton Oiler? I would not want that hanging over my head.
I love how you said, like, what would, like, his contract be? And my first reflex with my hand was to flip over to the screen and click cat friendly, and then I died inside because I don't know. It would be interesting. I don't know how Edmonton's going to make the money work, because I'm assuming he's due for a pay raise, and he's probably going to get the McDavid money and maybe a little bit more, depending on how long his deal is going to be. I don't know if if I'm Edmonton, I don't want him to get too far into the year and then be like, hey, maybe I'll test free agency and see, 'cause somebody's going to give him a boatload of money. Whether it's a mistake or not is neither here nor there. They can kind of decide, right? But there's, if I'm Edmonton, I don't want to let that go. And if you do, let's say you're like, hey, we're not going to bring Leon Draisaitl back. I don't think it'll be the worst thing for the Edmonton Oilers. Like, I think they'll survive. You obviously want him back because he makes your team better. But then it would be, how are we going to allocate those funds, right? Like, what are we going to upgrade with them? And if it's worth it, sure, then do it. But if we all expect the Edmonton Oilers to be contenders, they're not moving him at the deadline. They're not moving him for, you know what I mean? Like, nothing. So I hope he stays because it's fun, but I wouldn't be shocked if he is donning another jersey for the end of his career.
It's a very strong forwards class. I like it, especially the two at the top, Draisaitl, Rantanen. I feel like the defensemen are really old. A lot of them are a lot older. I mean, Burns, Theodore, Orlov as well. But you look at the goaltenders, Shesterkin, Ullmark, Hill. I don't know how I feel about Georgiev, even though he had that good first round. And Frederik Andersen, I think I'm staying away from. I think he's too injury prone, so I'm staying away from that.
See, the problem with Shesterkin is he wants to stay a Ranger, and the Rangers want him to stay a Ranger. But he's probably looking at about a $12 million contract, and that, you know, that's not going to help the Rangers cap situation at all. But he also is the only reason they made it as far as they did this year. So, I mean, is that merited? That, you know, you get him locked up at that number. If the cap keeps going up, then it doesn't look as bad as time goes on, or it doesn't hamper you as much, as I should say. But that's going to be an interesting story to follow with the Rangers. Linus Ullmark, you know, I think I don't think he gets traded to Ottawa without the expectation that he's going to sign something long term there, because he said it was important for him to go somewhere where he would have the opportunity to be the guy in the crease, and there's nobody, you know, it's his crease for as long as he wants it in Ottawa. So I'd expect him to stick around. But yeah, the goalie class after that is like, you know, Frederik Andersen gets too injured. Georgiev, you know, let's see how he plays this year. I think that he's a wild card there. Yeah, the defense class, like you said, it's get up in there in age. But yeah, we'll see what you know. There's going to be a lot going on this season. Mikko Rantanen, I think he stays in Colorado. I think, you know, that they're married to him and McKinnon as long as they can keep those two around.
I think Ullmark will find a home somewhere else. Two reasons. A, it's Ottawa. Wait till homie gets there and really starts to experience it. Again, it's Ottawa. If you know, you know. Two, he's going to realize that being the starting goalie on a terrible team is probably like, it's unless Ottawa shells out a ton of money to keep him there, there are no shortage of teams that are going to line up for his services, right? So we mentioned a couple. Let's say Igor decides to move on, right? Well, the Rangers now need a goalie. Well, Ullmark's on the market, right? Carolina needs to do something. Maybe they, I don't know, run out with 100-year-old Freddie Anderson and whatever other corpse of Antti Ranta is left, and then boom, they're going to need a goalie. Let's say the Colorado Avalanche, I don't know, miraculously find a way to like make their cap work. Like, I don't know, man. Georgiev is not very good. Imagine if they had a good goalie, how much better they can be. There are options for teams that are looking for goaltending, and we know that teams are coveted to find guys who can be really solid between the net. These are all teams that are way better than the Ottawa Senators. So unless the Senators are giving him like 8 years and like $8+ million, if I'm him, I play well this year, hope the team does well, and then at least leverage that into a deal. Like, we know that players in a contract year are out there to get money. And no fault of their own, they like, go get your bag, king. So I don't know if he's going to stay in Ottawa, because I wouldn't, especially if I can get similar money and be on a better team, right? Like, do you want to win or do you want to live in Ottawa?
And there's also the possibility they flip him at the deadline too.
That was my next question. It's like, do they flip him at the deadline? Because Boston did not have to trade them. They were going to ask for King's ransom. But Ottawa's in a spot where they can probably get some decent assets for him at the deadline if he's playing well. And I'm pretty sure he's going to want to get traded, because if they stink and, they're not helping him on defense, his stock might go down. So I'm pretty sure he's going to want to get traded at the deadline.
State of Survival checking in. Thanks again for coming back and watching. Don't forget to hit that rate, review, subscribe, all that on Twitter and YouTube. Follow us there as well. No one is talking Spencer Knight. I can only assume he does not want to be traded, or his name would have come up for sure. That is an interesting name to come out there, because obviously Bobrovsky is the starting goalie in Florida, but they did invest a first-round pick on Spencer Knight a couple of years ago, and when you do that, there is an expectation there, because you don't usually spend first-round picks on goalies unless it's a sure thing. That is going to be, I know Florida is going to try and compete again, but I mean, the Spencer Knight still have upside. How much of them do we see with the Panthers this year? That's going to be interesting, an interesting dynamic.
Somebody can line up and take a chance on it. It depends, I guess, what the Florida Panthers want to do. Like, Bobrovsky's not getting any younger either, right? So he may have one of those contracts that it might be hard to move, but he also has a Stanley Cup ring now on his finger, so that changes a lot of things. I feel like there's a whole lot of other things for Spencer Knight, right? Going into the player assistance program, he's come out, he's fine, he's doing better. Love to hear it. So this might be a case of we don't have space and we have to maybe move on from him, or maybe they're just saying, hey, we're going to hold on as long as we can and watch a goalie who then becomes 24, 25, 26, who gets his first crack at being a starter.
So Bobrovsky's got this year and next year at $10 million, and Spencer Knight's got 2 more years at $4.5 million as an RFA as well. So he's going to be the backup there, and like you said, Bobrovsky's no spring chicken. They're going to give him some starts, and maybe it's a slow transition process, and he becomes the next goalie for the Panthers once Bobrovsky. He's 35 years old, so a lot of big names there. We're going to be talking about the free agency throughout the season, as because that's always a storyline with guys with expiring contracts. I know Sidney Crosby is on that list, but I can't imagine him leaving Pittsburgh. I think he finishes his career there. If he had never won a cup, different story. In a world where maybe he could go to Colorado and play with his buddy Nate McKinnon, but I just don't see how that works financially for Colorado. So I don't expect him to go anywhere. So we'll be talking plenty of 2025 free agency class throughout the summer and the upcoming season here on Total Hockey Now. Now we got about 10 minutes to go here. Let's talk a little 2025 Stanley Cup odds here, and I'm going to put them up on the screen there for you. And that's the full 32 teams there. Obviously on the right side, we're not going to talk about too many of those teams. The fact that the only thing I will say on the right is the Ottawa Senators being at plus 4,200 and being above teams like Islanders and even the Capitals, I felt like should have been at least above the Blues and maybe the Penguins. I don't know. Don't want to spend too much time on the right side there. But on the left, Edmonton comes in at the favorite as plus 850 with Florida right behind them. Anthony's Devils at plus 1,100. How does that make you feel seeing them so heavily favored after the offseason they had?
I mean, it's got to make you feel good, but they're it's still off season, not accounting for any injuries or anything like that taking place. And I think they were that high last year. Once after the end of the postseason, they got that high that last year as well. But hey, I'm happy about that. I'll take it. I do like the Nashville Predators at plus 1,600.
See, that's going to be the one that people are going to jump on for sure. That's going to be the popular pick there. But hey, at plus 1,600, why not, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting to see Ottawa at plus 4,200. I don't know what we're thinking here, but definitely looking at that left side, certain things do stand out for me. One would be the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know that they've gone through, losing Steven Stamkos is tough, and they've made their choices, but the Tampa Bay Lightning are the team that they are. They know how to get things done. They know how to win. It's one of those things. Sometimes maybe they try to make another run. It's not impossible. It would not shock me to see them do so. Vegas Golden Knights plus 1,700. Did we forget that they're 100% circumventing the cap come trade deadline again? Mark Stone's going to get hurt. We're going to add another prolific goal scorer. Cap goes over 100 million. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter in the playoffs. So I think that's a good one there. The Winnipeg Jets too, plus 2,800. They have the best goalie on that side, I think. No matter how good the other goalies are, Connor Hellebuck is elite. Their defense is good. As a team, like, they're still kind of put together. There hasn't been a ton of change, and I think that's okay. They had a really tough matchup against Colorado, and Colorado, man, like, they did what they needed to do. The Jets could have finished first and not had to deal with that. Instead, they did. So I think the Winnipeg Jets offers the best value there at 28-1. That's really good. I can't see a single team on that right side that I would honestly think has a legitimate chance at winning a Stanley Cup.
I'm shocked that the Jets and the Canucks are lower than the Kings.
I think the reason the Canucks are lower is they did lose Elias Lindholm, and I think that's why Boston at plus 2,000 actually isn't bad, because if they were, they pushed the eventual champs to 7 games in the second round. Now you got a chance here where you got Elias Lindholm, you put Zadorov on the blue line, so Boston just that much deeper down the middle now and a little bit more grittier. But to go back to the Canucks, I think that's why they drop a little bit there. And the Jets, they go as Hellebuck goes. So, I mean, I think they're right in that range. I don't, maybe the Kings could be a little bit lower, but, I don't mind that. Looking on the right side, yeah, there's nobody that you realistically look at. If you like a feel-good story and want to say the Capitals overhaul and Ovechkin gets the goal record this year and they go all the way, great, but I'm not wasting my money there.
$100 million payroll, and we're 65-1.
What about Stater Survival saying, because now the Flyers got Michkov. So what are your thoughts on him coming up and, maybe making their odds a little bit better?
I agree that I think the Hurricanes are probably a little inflated around, but I'm not ready to say, oh, Carolina stinks. Like, that's not where I'm going. Like, I don't think they're missing the playoffs, but they do have something to prove with what they're going to be treading out going into next year. He said Philly with Michkov coming in. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about Stanley Cup, but I mean, if we're going to talk about odds to make the playoffs, absolutely. Philly was a third-place team for most of the season until the whole Carter Hart situation derailed them. So I think that is smart money for a playoff potential bet there. Pittsburgh also feel-good story. If you think all the things that I said about Pittsburgh going into last year, if you think that was on a 1-year delay and it's going to happen this year, then go ahead, go for the Penguins. Islanders, again, playoff team. I don't see them as a championship team. Unless Ilya Sorokin, plays like a Connor Hellebuck level and Anthony Duclair is, the next coming that helps them out. I don't see it there. But on the left side, I know Dallas is up there at plus 1,000, but I mean, to me, that's the one I'm looking at. If you want to, maybe make a little cash there. I mean, they were close this year. Edmonton, stepped up and did what they had to do at the right time, but Dallas certainly going to be back in the mix next year. No reason to think they won't be.
Flyers, no real shot, obviously, to win a Stanley Cup. I don't think so. They still don't, like, their goaltending is still uncertain, and they're not like a great team. I think they surpassed the expectations, and maybe people think they're legit. They might take a little bit of a step back. So I'm not. Also, that Metropolitan Division is got to be better. It can't be that bad, right? So I think the path for them to get there is tough. I don't even know if they're a playoff team, right? Because again, if we expect the Devils to do better, if we expect the Capitals to do better, if we expect the Penguins to do better, like, somebody's got to do worse. And the Philadelphia Flyers are my bet to do worse. I would see them regressing more than anything, not moving forward. They could be more likely a lottery team than a good hockey team.
I mean, when you creases Samuel Ersson and Ivan Fedotov, that's probably the more likely scenario there. But I do expect Michkov to inject some life into that lineup, especially offensively.
All right. As long as Torts doesn't, do anything to mess with him, we should be fine. I am expecting Michkov to be a healthy scratch at some point.
Oh yeah,
because of his poor defensive play or something. But I'm hoping it's not like game 6 into the year. You know what I mean? And maybe later on during the year, trying to send a message or something. But not.
Oh, you can book that we're going to be talking about Michkov being benched in like mid-November. Like, book it. It's going to happen.
That's I'm trying not to. Trying not to think about it. I'm trying to see if maybe people don't talk about it, so we can scoop him up late in fantasy drafts. because he has to go late because I'm absolutely terrified of what Tort's going to do. Like, I can't draft Sean Couturier because now, like, if you're willing to sit your captain, what are you going to do to the kid who doesn't, who's in the league and trying to learn the North American way? One bad puck turnover in the neutral zone and Mitch going to be hammered to a bench.
Yeah, Tortorella has a way to screw a random fantasy week for you because he benched like a key player that, was going to win faceoffs for you, and then he didn't play for 2 games or something stupid like that. But, I think also maybe that kind of Tortorella mentality is starting. He's getting maybe, not to say too old for that, but I don't know if he's going to do that as much this year, but you never know with him. He's a wild card. So we'll talk updated odds. We're going to try to do a different odds every week here. We'll do Eastern Conference, we'll do Western Conference, divisions, awards, etc. We'll keep that going throughout the summer here on Total Hockey Now. Now, before we wrap things up, got to do a little mask off here. Again, apologies, no fantasy mock draft today. Blindsided by it being down today, even though I tested it and it worked yesterday. Thank you, ESPN. Hopefully we're back up for you next week. But before we go here, we got to do a little mask off. And I decided to go Looney Tunes edition because you got 2 masks here inspired by Looney Tunes characters. On the light, Patrick Lalime, of course, Marvin the Martian. We all remember that. He carried that theme through multiple teams. And then Mikhail Telquist back in the late 00s of the 2000s. Coyotes goalie, of course, with Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner there peeking its head in the back of the mask there. So he had a couple of different Wile E. Coyote masks, but that was the one I thought that was the nicest. So without further ado, you've got money to spend on one of these masks. Which one are you bringing home? Wile E. Coyote or Marvin the Martian?
I think I'm going with Marvin the Martian because it just fits that Senators theme and that jersey well. I do like the Wile E. Coyote one, but I think that the Marvin the Martian one just fits well with the Senators jersey and their look.
So remember when I saved that money from not buying that jersey that was not very good? I didn't like any. I would like to use my funds now to buy both of these masks. Both of them are fantastic. I love it. Marvin the Martian, by far my favorite Looney Tune character. Like my favorite part of Space Jam, the first one, is like when he looks up right at the Monstars and Jordan. He's like, ready? And he just like, that's all. But I love it. I had a Marvin the Martian keychain. He's great. I love it. I was watching hockey as a kid, and Patrick Lalime is out there with the Looney Tune mat. Loved it. Also, Wile E. Coyote. Like it's obviously the team and everything. It's great. You can see the Roadrunner as well. Like it's just a win, all around win. This is fantastic. I would buy both. The soft side obviously goes to Marvin the Martian. That's my love. So we're for sure. But I would buy both. Easily buy both. There's no question about it. This is an elite matchup right here. This is not watching San Jose and Seattle on a Wednesday night, when there's 2 games on the slate. That's not what this is. This is prime time hockey night in Canada, Toronto, Montreal. Let's assume in a fictitious world, game 7 of this, I don't know, Eastern Conference final. Let's say it's that. That's what this would be.
Love the Marvin the Martian mask. It's everything you said. It is tough to pick one over the other. I'm not going to buy both. I don't got the money banked to do so. I'm going with the Telquist mask. Now, if you tell me to pick a goalie between Lalime and Telquist, there's no comparison there. It's Lalime. But I just love everything about that Wile E. Coyote mask. As a kid watching Looney Tunes, the Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote sketches were always the best ones for me. Those are the ones I always liked watching the most. So got to go with a soft spot in my heart there. We're going Wile E. Coyote. You don't win a lot against the Roadrunner, but you win here on this show. So good for you.
Yeah, see?
I thought that was a good one. I put some thought into that one, and we'll have a sweater weather or a mask off for you next week here on Total Hockey Now. Now, again, folks, thank you as always for tuning in, all 80 of you. Don't forget, rate, review, subscribe on Twitter and YouTube. Give us a follow, all that good stuff on social media. But we got to get out of here because I got to do double duty. And I got to do Rip and Riff, which is coming up here in just a couple of minutes. And the back time bed froze on me. That's usually happens on Rip and Riff, but it happened on Total Hockey Now today. So, I guess that's just because we're on Wednesdays. Maybe it's a Wednesday thing. But nonetheless, please give us all a follow on Twitter for @AntRivera86 and for @FuzzyChris91. I am at Pucking Thoughts. We'll be back with you next week, hopefully with a mock draft. You're on Total Hockey Now, on the Total Hockey Now Twitter, YouTube, and no longer Facebook.